This is Elizabeth Hoover, but that's Miss Hoover to her students. She is a second grade teacher at Springfield Elementary. She feels rather apathetic toward her job, regularly showing films and finding pointless busy work. Her teaching style gets under the skin of her top student, Lisa Simpson, who Miss Hoover has had multiple run-ins with. And Ralph Wiggum? Put your hand down, Ralph. This intro isn't about you. When Miss Hoover isn't teaching, she's out there looking for love and running red lights. Also, one time she thought she had Lyme disease. This is the history of Miss Hoover. So what's the deal with Miss Hoover? Seriously, I want to know. In the early days of the show, they introduced Mrs. Krabappel to mix it up with Bart, and Miss Hoover to fight with Lisa. Of course, Edna Kay went on to have quite the impressive run on the series, getting multiple Spotlight episodes and status quo changes. Whereas Miss Hoover fell by the wayside, was doomed to the role of that other teacher. So what happened? Is this a case of the show only needing one main teacher role? Or does Miss Hoover have secret depths and brings her own unique spin on this archetype? Let's go back to the beginning to find out. So, fun fact, Miss Hoover is the first Simpsons character whose episode debut kinda surprised me when researching this. Think back to the early days, dear viewer. What episode do you think it is? Well, she was mentioned in Season 1's Moaning Lisa, and again in Season 2's Bart's Dog Gets an F, as Mrs. Hoover, but she isn't actually seen. Miss Hoover's first appearance is, in fact, Brush with Greatness, where she attends Burns' art show. She declares, "He's bad, but he'll die, so I like it." That's right, the school teacher most associated with Lisa started her Simpsons career dissing Mr. Burns. At least she didn't make fun of his genitalia. Shortly afterward, we get Lisa's substitute, her true breakout. This episode characterized her as kind of a wreck, with the kids gossiping about why she's gone, and Lisa theorizing she was dumped again. Well, she was described as Mrs. Hoover before. Anyway, she's horrified at the thought of having Lyme disease, and, as Skinner shuffles her away, he provides her first name Elizabeth. This is a character tidbit that the writer stuck to this very day. Of course, we learn later that Hoover's Lyme disease was psychosomatic, whatever that means. She also seems to be quite a stickler for her lesson plan. Early Miss Hoover tended to be more neurotic and reactionary than in later incarnations. Season 3 gives us Lisa the Greek, where she is horrified by Lisa's gambling story about kicking that meaningless field goal. She's so horrified, she loses one of her legs. In Separate Vocations, Lisa tells Hoover to shove it, once again blindsiding her. Later, when the teacher's editions are stolen, she is overwhelmed and has to repeat her mantra, "Calm blue ocean, calm blue ocean." Separate Vocations is an important milestone episode in that it establishes the bored, minimum effort aspect of Miss Hoover's personality. After conducting the career aptitude test, she instructs everyone to stare at the front of the room for the remaining 15 minutes. Later, she's clearly clueless about the history questions that she's reading off to the class. Later in Season 4, she wants to quietly run out the clock on the school year and very openly admits to assigning a time waster to the class. Now, to be fair, Miss Hoover wasn't totally checked out in the early days. She seems to be the only one in school questioning the educational value of the yo-yo assembly. You've probably noticed that, early on, Miss Hoover occasionally had blue hair, sometimes brown, and randomly in the background, red hair. They finally settled on brown hair, but Hoover was like Wiggum and Moe, where they were trying things out for a while. Anyway, Season 4 further developed her working relationship as Lisa's teacher. On the one hand, she's clearly very complimentary of her good study habits. But as shown in Camp Krusty, there's a pettiness toward her top student too, insisting that everyone needs a blotch on their permanent record. In I Love Lisa, however, she's more than happy to give Lisa a lead role in the play. As a whole, it seems like Hoover values Lisa as a student, but finds her a bit overbearing and annoying. I think Hoover would take a dozen persistent Lisas over one Ralph. Oh yeah, Ralph Wiggum. We can't forget about him. He is easily the second most important character relationship for Miss Hoover. Things start out pretty tame in Season 3, with Hoover describing his report on his worms as very graphic. Then they gravitate to jokes about Ralph eating paste. I Love Lisa showcases her increasing hostility toward him. She tells him that the kids are right to laugh at him, and appears increasingly frustrated by him eating crayons and gluing his head to his shoulder. In general, this episode emphasizes her no-nonsense attitude, that desire to get things over with. If the police are gonna blackmail her into giving the lead role to Ralph, fine, whatever. She'll be a deceitful cow to Rex. Then, when managing the play, she's getting on Bart's case about acting like a maniac, and then telling Milhouse to stop worrying and shoving him out there. Gotta say, it's fun seeing Miss Hoover mix it up with Bart and Milhouse. Makes you wonder if she dealt with them 2 years ago. The only other characters we see her really interact with is Lyle Landley and this card-playing crew when they gossip about Marge. Season 4 is probably the high point for Miss Hoover. Since the David Merkin years, seasons 5 and 6, contained only one episode that specifically featured her. Occasionally she gets one-off jokes, but in most cases she plays a minor role in the context of larger Springfield Elementary stories. Smoking with Edna in the hallway, eating sloppy Jimbos, participating in the teacher strike. This is certainly the golden age of Ralph Wiggum hand-raising jokes, commenting about Snagglepuss going to the bathroom, Ralph's cat, and, well, this happened. Miss Hoover's biggest role in this era is Lisa's rival, as her "Yowie" ends up kickstarting Lisa's rivalry. Then later, she's stuck judging the diorama contest with Skinner. At this point, they're really driving home how bored Miss Hoover is by it all. How she's tired of calling on Lisa all the time, says "yay" sarcastically when Skinner dismisses the class, and is already driving away in her convertible when the strike is announced. She's not especially graceful with Lisa's insistent questions later. Although in the Flash Forward episode, she does seem to recall Lisa fondly as a student, so maybe she got over it. Also, I guess Martin Prince fell in love with her at some point. Those 4th graders seem to love that Miss Hoover. The Oakley and Weinstein era, seasons 7 and 8, took a more combative approach to Miss Hoover and Lisa's relationship. Season 7 gave us both Lisa the Vegetarian and Lisa the Iconoclast, after all. In the first example, she very clearly and obviously respects Lisa's moral objection to dissecting worms. Then, when Lisa turns in her smoldering report on Jebediah Springfield, she gives it an F, calling it dead white male bashing from a PC thug, and it's women like her that keeps the rest of them from landing a husband. Damn. By season 8, Lisa is so fed up with her teacher's lack of effort that she's willing to transfer to a military school. On the Ralph front, she tells him that there are no more worms and to sleep while everyone else is learning. Then Ralph says something about a Viking or whatever. I wasn't really paying attention. Later, Ralph calls her mommy, asking her to open his milk. Miss Hoover is not very kind to him. In Summer of 4'2", she tells Ralph to go home after he has questions about what happened to Lincoln at Ford's Theater. This era seemed to be all about Miss Hoover being short with people, not willing to entertain other viewpoints. However, she does earn one very important achievement during this era, or should I say a cromulent achievement, as she introduced this exciting new word to our lexicon. When Mike Scully took over the show in season 9, it was mostly business as usual at first. More of that Hoover-Ralph dynamic, with her not picking him for the Skinner tribute, or being annoyed with his various reports. She's not especially charitable to Lisa either, forcing her to turn around her desk at Christmas, and telling her that her project is terrible at best, and is surprised by her. To be fair, Hoover was probably right on this one. In season 10's Lisa Gets an A, she comments that Lisa is saying brown a lot, doesn't let Lisa off the hook for this test, and spills various liquors when grading them. We do get a brief glimpse of Hoover's personal life away from the school during this era. She's quite thirsty for a poo during the bachelor auction, pooling money with the other single ladies, and going on a date with him. Unfortunately, now we've arrived at the less fun part of the Simpsons Histories journey. Much like Maude Flanders and Helen Lovejoy, Miss Hoover is another Maggie Roswell character. So around season 11, when she had her pay dispute with Fox and left the show, so did Miss Hoover. She was reduced to mere background roles. And in episodes like Trilogy of Error and Little Girl in the Big Ten, she received one line of dialogue, voiced by a different actor. She didn't return to the role until season 15's Treehouse of Horror, in which Hoover tricks this hobo into meeting the Grim Reaper. Hey, at least you returned for a memorable joke, right? Unlike Helen, who enjoyed a minor renaissance when Roswell returned, Miss Hoover didn't bounce back to Lisa's Substitute or I Love Lisa levels of prominence in random episodes. It was mostly one, maybe two minor roles per year. These later years continued Season 9's trend of exploring Miss Hoover's dating life in more detail. In Season 20, she's proposed to by this guy, but hires Homer to dump him for her. In Season 26, Bart's new teacher ends up flirting with her, and the kids set up a fake profile to snoop on him. In Halloween of Horror, here she is at adult Halloween, flirting with Professor Frink. Later that same season, she starts dating him when he becomes a Casanova, trying to track him down at Moe's bar. At the end of that episode, Frink pairs her up with Duffman. And can you believe they actually kinda stuck to this bit of continuity? In the Treehouse of Horror, 3 seasons later, here's Duffman sleeping over at her house. However, Miss Hoover finds giving Lisa an F to be more satisfying than him. In the flash-forward ending of Flanders' Ladder, we discover she is one of Ned's dozens of dead wives he probably murdered. Oh, speaking of the future, in future drama, Homer tries setting up he and Bart with Mrs. Krabappel and Miss Hoover. Then later, in Season 25's Days of Future Future, when Bart is a little older, he actually hooks up with her. Okay, so this is a future episode, and this also happens in a dream, so technically this didn't actually occur from a narrative perspective. Also, I'm not positive about this bit of trivia because I haven't watched all the future episodes in a while, but Miss Hoover might be the only Simpsons regular confirmed to have hooked up with Bart on the show. That is your uncomfortable Simpsons fact of the day. Although honestly, between Bart and Duffman, we can kinda get a sense of Miss Hoover's type. As for other relationships, these later seasons didn't lean on the Hoover-Krabappel friendship that much. Like she attended her wedding reception and expressed disappointment when Krabappel hit Bart. I guess even Miss Hoover has her standards. But if we're not getting jokes about her dating life, it's the typical Springfield Elementary jokes with Lisa and Ralph. Somewhat surprisingly, the show kind of abandoned her back and forth with Ralph. They didn't go for as many Ralph raising his hand jokes in the modern era. Probably their most notable moment is when Miss Hoover gets tenure in Season 20 and immediately has Ralph teach the class. Instead, Miss Hoover became even more of a Lisa-centric character than ever before. In Season 17, she butts heads with Lisa over creationism. In Season 21's Treehouse of Horror, she butts heads with her again. And, thanks to Bart, ends up losing her head in the process. But don't worry, she gets her revenge in a later Treehouse of Horror, giving Lisa an A+ on her report and Bart an F. What is it with all these head-related Hoover and Bart jokes? Jeez. Miss Hoover's general laziness got ramped up in these later seasons, if such a thing is possible. Here she is sleeping through a movie, being intrigued by Skinner's idea of how to do even less work, and not understanding this To Kill a Mockingbird reference. She is signed reading the wiki article, not the book. They've had Marge consult with Miss Hoover on a couple separate cases, both of which were completely unhelpful. Finally, Marge is getting a taste of that patented Miss Hoover apathy. The biggest change with Miss Hoover and Lisa is that, even more than before, Lisa's getting more of a glimpse behind the curtain. Hoover has her take care of the school's hamster because she says she's doing jello shots with former students. In Season 29, Lisa confesses to changing the answers on a quiz she turned in, but Hoover doesn't care, and only demands that she returns the nicotine gum that she and Bart swiped. In Season 31, after being cheered up by Lisa's big smile, she tosses her Zoloft away, and then offers up Lisa some of her other pills, despite not knowing what they are. I mean, Lisa knows so much about her teacher by now that she's able to remind her of her upcoming dental appointment. That being said, Lisa still can't really comprehend where Miss Hoover is actually coming from, why she is the way she is. Thankfully, they sorta answered that question in Season 32's Sorry Not Sorry. That's right, Miss Hoover, who floundered her way through 30 seasons, did eventually get a spotlight episode. In this one, Hoover sprained a disc in her back and had to lie on the floor while teaching. She gives the entire class a B-, and Lisa is so enraged that she calls her a hack. She sends her to detention and Lisa refuses to apologize. It gets pretty contentious between these two, with Hoover threatening to move up to the 3rd grade next year to torment her again, with Lisa's dreams of Yale hanging in the balance. Lisa finds out that Miss Hoover actually lives a lonely life, having to take 2 different buses home and then sliding down this hill on cardboard. She lives alone with a cat that doesn't like her and desperately buys lotto tickets downstairs. In the end, Lisa spends her college savings to buy her a chair and apologizes. Hoover doesn't initially accept the apology, but does eventually later when she finds the chair's massage functionality. Yes, I did just summarize the entire plot of a season 32 episode for this video. But I think it's a good example of the problem with how the show handles Miss Hoover as a character. I really appreciate that they gave us a closer look at this rather mysterious character. I've always wondered what the deal with Miss Hoover is, it's why I made this video. But I find myself incredibly underwhelmed by what we actually found. Miss Hoover has almost always been portrayed as a frustrated, unhappy character, with very few emotional highs or successes. So finding out that Hoover is depressed at school because she's depressed at home, it's like, yeah, I kind of expected some variation on this. To be fair, I do feel more sympathy for Hoover because of this episode, but we've still never gotten the why of Hoover. Like, how did things go south for her? Was she always this jaded, or did she start out her career like Krabappel? I understand her present situation, but I don't really get what she wants out of life. In previous videos, I talked about how Maggie Roswell leaving the show affected Ned Flanders' character arc and Helen Lovejoy's usage. But I think Roswell's departure significantly hurt Miss Hoover. After taking a break, she never quite regained her footing as a supporting character. With Hoover gone, Ralph Wiggum didn't have anyone in the classroom to bounce jokes off of. So he sort of floated off into the ether of random non-sequitur land. I mean, let's be honest, he was probably going to do this either way, but I think Miss Hoover is a character that does a great job grounding Ralph Wiggum's shtick. There are so many hilarious Hoover-Ralph exchanges in the early seasons, just absolutely classic stuff, and the show just never returned to it. I think there's an argument that Miss Hoover's decline in prominence also limited some of Lisa's versatility. These later and middle seasons shifted more to a Lisa and Skinner dynamic. And yeah, Skinner's hilarious and all, but Miss Hoover's complete disinterest plays so well against Lisa's high, strong personality. Lisa's stories, especially her achievement-oriented ones, are improved by having her run up against Miss Hoover for a scene or two. Especially now, since Mrs. Krabappel has passed on, there's more need for a teacher character than ever before. I miss having these regular classroom scenes. Ralph Wiggum and Lisa Simpson are such dramatically different characters, and it's cool that Miss Hoover can be a comedic foil for both. I think she is a tool in the writer's arsenal that, for whatever reason, they didn't utilize enough. I wish there were more I Love Lisa and Lisa Substitute type roles for her. Miss Hoover is good at what she does, and deserved better. We need a Hoover HD era renaissance. Let me know in the comments what you think of Miss Hoover and your favorite moment of hers. Do you think she is as underappreciated as I do, or has she simply run her course? She's the kind of character that we don't notice that much, but she really does have some iconic moments. Also, as always, let me know in the comments who you would like to see for the next Simpsons Histories. I'm honestly not sure where we should go next. We could continue in a more niche direction and hit up the sea captains and squeaky voiced teens of the world, but maybe it's time for a more prolific character, someone like Mo Sizlak or Chief Wiggum. Maybe Ralph Wiggum should be the follow-up to Miss Hoover. Let me know in the comments. I am ready to be won over by a good pitch. As always, thanks for watching.